Hello, beautiful friends. This is Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while getting to experience the love, the compassion, and the wisdom of your angels. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And you can find out more about my services and classes at illuminatingsouls.com, where I offer one-on-one angel sessions, which are awesome. I offer soul mentoring, which is a beautiful way to bring consistent support, love, and guidance to a passage of your life. And I also offer classes, so lots of different ways we can connect during your waking hours. But now it is time for you to prepare to drift off into a beautiful experience of sleep. So the way this podcast works is we will talk for a little while, then I will call in the angels who are already here, and then I'm going to read you a story. So the angels and I will be with you for the next hour or so you have plenty of time to drift off. And the angels will remain with you even after this podcast completes. So I want to begin by inviting you to get cozy, whatever that means to you. Snuggle on under the covers and fluff up your pillows just so. Allow your body to begin to relax. You have done enough for today, and you are worthy of a good night's sleep. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and out, and allow a wave of relaxation to begin moving through your body. To let your body know that it is time to rest. And the angels are helping to cultivate a sweet vibrational sanctuary where you can rest and let go of the waking world and transition into the deep mystery that is our sleeping world. It is a time for your body to replenish and repair itself and heal. And it is also a time for your consciousness and soul to go into the place where we travel when we release our waking consciousness. So take a breath in and out and allow the love to pour over you. If you're new to the world of angels, they are divine beings who embody unconditional love for us. And this concept of unconditional love is one that can be hard to contemplate from our human perspective because so much of life here is conditional, right? We might desire to love unconditionally, but then perhaps something happens and we feel our love diminish. So I want you to contemplate unconditional love to be much more like sunlight, that the sun does its thing and it shines on everyone. It is available always. And there is no filter that the sun contemplates. Are you worthy of the sun today? Have you done enough acts of kindness to be worthy of my warmth? The sun simply is. And this is how I invite you to contemplate the love of the angels. It simply is. And your angels have known you beyond time and space, beyond the awareness that you have of self in this dimension. They know your deepest truth, and they love you. Every once in a while when I'm doing an angel session, someone will say, I bet my angels are so annoyed with me. I keep asking for support and then I don't take action. And I let them know that it is not possible for your angels to grow annoyed with you. They understand the complexity of the human experience. You know, we're born into this lifetime with a limited awareness of who we are, of our potential, and of what is possible through our lives. And we are so much more than we know. You are so much more than you know. And the angels help you to remember this. So take a deep breath in. And I'm going to invite the angels to be here now. They are already here. But I love the ritual of calling them in because it reminds all that I am, all that we are here in the sacred flow of love. So beautiful angels on high, I welcome you into this space, and as I do, I can feel your love welcoming each one of us into this sanctuary of light with you. So dear ones, just take a big, deep breath in and allow yourself to be received in love. Angels, I ask that you create a beautiful frequency of light that allows each one of us to drift off into a restful expanse of sleep. I ask that you clear and lift any fear or doubt or worry that we no longer need to embody. I ask that you clear this through grace and infuse each one of us with a vibration of well-being. Angels, I ask that you hear our prayers and that you amplify our waves of inspiration so that divine right action and divine movement are more readily accessible in our waking hours. Angels, we ask for infusions of miracles and healing in ways that are in alignment with our highest and best good. And dear ones, just take a nice deep breath in. And with your permission, the angels are infusing the room you are in with soft pink light that is infused with love that has been calibrated for you. Just allow your mind to rest now. Just listen to the sound of my voice and the images and words that we bring to you now. Come into this gentle, sweet conversation where I promise not to share anything so important that you'll have to stay awake to hear it. You know, it's so interesting that space right before wake and sleep is a powerful time to share our prayers and intentions with the angels and with God, that allows us to surrender them up. And what I often find is when I do this, I awaken in the morning or the day after with clarity, with a spark of inspiration. So take a breath in and out and allow your body to receive these waves of love that are coming to you, helping to smooth out any tightness that might be present, helping to heal anywhere in your body where you may have been storing stress or worry. Take a big, deep breath in and out and allow the light to flow to you. Even as I speak these words, I feel the infusion of blessings coming to you now. You know, on the earth plane, we sometimes forget that co-creation happens multidimensionally and is not always perceived in the timeline of right now. That the dreams of your heart, the prayers of your soul, are vibrational imprints in the greater universe. And in this moment, the angels are helping to orchestrate infusions of ease and grace and resolution for you. So I affirm that angel blessings are coming to you now. And while you sleep, you are aligning with them. As you rest, the path of ease is opening for you. And you don't need to know how any of this works. Just trust that it does. And if there's anywhere in your life or beyond where you would like to ask for additional prayers or healing, simply bring this into your heart now. And the angels will receive this with you and from you. and they will amplify your requests. You can ask for support, and when you do, you are not taking the angels from something more important. Again, think of the sun. You would never imagine not standing outside in the warm sunlight because someone else needs it more than you do. There is more than enough. So you go ahead and ask for support in whatever way is most meaningful for you right now. And allow the love to come streaming in for you. And the angels and I will be with you. You know, one of the things that I love so much about the work I get to do is that even if we have never met, I feel the love of the tapestry of all who are participating in this moment. So even if you discover this podcast years from now, your spirit, your loving essence is a part of this moment, because our greater souls are not bound by time and space the way we are on the earth plane. So I feel your loving presence here right now. I feel a beautiful community of light from beyond this dimension coming together to create a beautiful space of love for you to drift off. So you breathe and you rest and give yourself permission to drift off. And while you do, I'm going to read to you. So tonight, we're going to return to the book, The Amulet by Edith Nesbitt, that was written in 1906. As a child, I hadn't read any of Edith Nesbitt's work. I think she may have been more popular in the UK, but her work is utterly enchanting. And I first heard the stories from The Amulet in the podcast Sleepy by Otis Gray. I think the first chapter he read was about Atlantis, so you know I was enchanted immediately and had to learn more. So, to give you a little bit of background of where we are in the story, there are 4 siblings who live in London in the early part of the 1900s, of course, since the book was written in 1906, so around that time. And their father is in a far-off land working. Their mother has taken ill and she has moved to a better climate with their baby brother. And the children are staying with old nurse who runs a boarding house of sorts in London and who has been with the family for a long time. And at present moment, the 4 children and an educated scholar are the only ones who are with old nurse in the house. The scholar is portrayed as forgetful, not terribly grounded, very engaged in his work. He forgets to eat and he doesn't have great social skills, but is also very kind and very learned. So, in a book prior to this one, the children met up with a Psammead. The Psammead is a sand fairy, as old as time. And the Psammead has the ability to grant wishes. But when the wishes are granted, they usually come with their own set of complications. So the children have agreed with the Psammead that they will not ask for any more wishes to come true. But what they really want to help manifest is that mother and father and their baby brother will come home. So they happen to come across an ancient artifact called the Amulet. And the Amulet has the ability to grant wishes. But they only have half the Amulet. So they discover the chant they need to say to activate the half of the Amulet that they have. And they are traveling through time portals in search of the other half of the Amulet that will enable them to reunite their family. And the part of the book we're picking up on, they have already had one adventure where they have traveled to ancient Egypt. So Egypt before the Egypt a lot of us know. And the reason I am not reading that chapter is because there's a bit of a battle there, and it's a children's book. It's not grim or anything like that, but I thought better of bringing that energy into the sleep sanctuary here under the blanket fort. I thought maybe not so much. So we're going to begin tonight with chapter 6, The Way to Babylon. How many miles to Babylon? 70. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again. Jane was singing to her doll, rocking it to and fro in the house which she had made for herself and it. The roof of the house was the dining table, and the walls were tablecloths hanging all around and kept in their places by books laid on their top ends at the table edge. The others were tasting the fearful joys of domestic tobogganing. You know how it is done, with the largest and best tea tray and the surface of the stair carpet. It is best to do it on the days when the stair rods are being cleaned, and the carpet is only held by the nails at the top. Of course, it is one of the 5 or 6 thoroughly tip-top games that grown-up people are so unjust to, and old Nurse, though a brick in many respects, was quite enough of a standard grown-up to put her foot down on the tobogganing long before any of the performers had had half enough of it. The tea tray was taken away, and the baffled party entered the sitting room in exactly the mood not to be pleased if they could help it. So Cyril said, "What a beastly mess." And Robert added, "Do shut up, Jane." Even Anthea, who was almost always kind, advised Jane to try another song. "I am sick to death of that," she said. It was a wet day, so none of the plans for seeing all the sights of London that can be seen for nothing could be carried out. Everyone had been thinking all the morning about the wonderful adventures of the day before, when Jane had held up the charm and it had turned into an arch through which they had walked straight out of the present time and the Regent's Park into the land of Egypt 8,000 years ago. The memory of yesterday's happenings was still extremely fresh and frightening, so that everyone hoped that no one would suggest another excursion into the past, for it seemed to all that yesterday's adventures were quite enough to last for at least a week. yet each felt a little anxious that the others should not think it was afraid. And presently Cyril, who really was not a coward, began to see that it would not be at all nice if he should have to think himself one. So he said, "I say, about that charm, Jane, come out. We ought to talk about it anyhow." "Oh, if that's all," said Robert. Jane obediently wriggled to the front of her house and sat there. She felt for the charm to make sure that it was still around her neck. "It isn't all," said Cyril, saying much more than he meant to because he thought Robert's tone had been rude, as indeed it had. "We ought to go and look for that amulet. What's the good of having a first-class charm and keeping it idle, just eating its head off in the stable?" "I'm game for anything, of course," said Robert, but he added with a fine air of chivalry, "only I don't think the girls are keen today somehow." "Oh, yes, I am," said Anthea hurriedly. "If you think I'm afraid, I'm not." "Well, I am, though," said Jane heavily. "I didn't like it, and I won't go there again. Not for anything I won't." "We shouldn't go there again, silly," said Cyril. "It would be some other place. I dare say a place with lions and tigers in it as likely as not." Seeing Jane so frightened made the others feel quite brave. They said they were certain they ought to go. "It's so ungrateful to the Psammead not to," Anthea added a little primly. Jane stood up. She was desperate. "I won't," she cried. "I won't. If you make me, I'll scream, and I'll scream, and I'll tell old nurse, and I'll get her to burn the charm in the kitchen fire. So now then." You can imagine how furious everyone was with Jane for feeling what each of them had felt all morning. In each breast the same thought arose. No one can say it's our fault. And they at once began to show Jane how angry they all felt that all the fault was hers. This made them feel quite brave. "It's always the way if you have girls in anything," Cyril spoke in a cold displeasure that was worse than Robert. And even Anthea said, "Well, I'm not afraid if I am a girl," which of course was the most cutting thing of all. Jane picked up her doll and faced the others in what is sometimes called the courage of despair. "I don't care," she said. "I won't, so there. It's just silly going to places when you don't want to and when you don't know what they're going to be like. You can laugh at me as much as you like. You're beasts, and I hate you all." With these awful words, she went out and banged the door. Then the others would not look at each other, and they did not feel so brave as they had done. Cyril took up a book, but it was not interesting to read. Robert kicked a chair leg absently. His feet were always eloquent in moments of emotion. Anthea stood pleating the end of the tablecloth into folds. She seemed earnestly anxious to get all the pleats the exact same size. The sound of Jane's sobs had died away. Suddenly Anthea said, "Oh, let it be, poor little pussy, you know she is the youngest." "She called us beasts," said Robert, kicking the chair suddenly. "Well," said Cyril, who was subject to passing fits of justice, "we began, you know. At least you did." Cyril's justice was always uncompromising. "I'm not going to say I'm sorry if you mean that," said Robert, and the chair leg cracked to the kick he gave as he said it. "Oh, do let's," said Anthea. "We're 3-1, and Mother does so hate it if we row. Come on. I'll say I'm sorry first, though I didn't say anything hardly." "All right, let's get it over," said Cyril, opening the door. "Hi, you, pussy." Far away up the stairs, a voice could be heard singing brokenly but still defiantly. "How many miles?" Sniff. "To Babylon." 70, sniff. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, sniff, and back again. It was trying, for this was plainly meant to annoy. But Anthea would not give herself time to think this. She led the way up the stairs, taking 3 at a time, and bounded to the level of Jane, who sat on the top step of all, thumping her doll to the tune of the song she was trying to sing. I say, Pussy, let it be Pax, we're sorry if you are. Well, it was enough. The kiss of peace was given by all. Jane, being the youngest, was entitled to the ceremonial. Anthea added a special apology of her own. I'm sorry if I was a pig, Pussy dear, she said, especially because in my really and truly inside mind, I've been feeling a little as if I'd rather not go into the past again either. But then do think, if we don't go, we shan't get the amulet, and oh, Pussy, think if we could only get Father and Mother and the lamb safe back. We must go. But we'll wait a day or 2 if you'd like, and then perhaps you'll feel braver. Raw meat makes you brave, however cowardly you are, said Robert, to show that there was now no ill feeling. And cranberries, that's what Tartars eat, and they're so brave it is simply awful. I suppose cranberries are only for Christmas time, but I'll ask old nurse to let you have your chop very raw if you like. I think I could be brave without that, said Jane hastily. She hated underdone meat. I'll try. At this moment, the door of the learned gentleman's room opened, and he looked out. Excuse me, he said in that gentle, polite, weary voice of his, but was I mistaken in thinking that I caught a familiar word just now? Were you not singing some old ballad of Babylon? No, said Robert. At least Jane was singing How Many Miles, but I shouldn't have thought you could have heard the words, for he would have said something for the sniffing, but Anthea pinched him just in time. I did not hear all the words, said the learned gentleman. I wonder if you could recite them to me. So they all sang together. How many miles to Babylon? 70. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again. I wish one could, the learned gentleman said with a sigh. Can't you? Asked Jane. Babylon has fallen, he answered with a sigh. You know it was once a great and beautiful city, and the center of learning and art, and now it's only ruins, so covered up with earth that people are not even agreed as to where it once stood. He was leaning on the banisters, and his eyes had a faraway look in them, as though he could see through the staircase window the splendor and glory of ancient Babylon. I say, Cyril remarked abruptly, you know that charm we showed you, and you told us how to say the name that's on it? Yes. Well, do you think that charm was ever in Babylon? It's quite possible, the learned gentleman replied. Such charms have been found in very early Egyptian tombs, yet their origin has not been accurately determined as Egypt, or may have been brought from Asia. Or supposing the charm to have been fashioned in Egypt, it might very well have been carried to Babylon by some friendly embassy, or brought back by the Babylonish army from some Egyptian campaign as part of the spoils of war. The inscription may be much later than the charm. Oh yes, it's a pleasant fancy that splendid specimen of yours was once used in Babylon. The others looked at each other, but it was Jane who spoke. Were the Babylon people savages? Were they always fighting and throwing things about? For she had read the thoughts of the others by the unerring light of her own fears. The Babylonians were certainly more gentle than the Assyrians, said the learned gentleman, and they were not savages by any means. A very high level of culture. He looked doubtfully at his audience and went on. I mean that they made beautiful statues and jewelry and built splendid palaces, and they were very learned. They had glorious libraries and high towers for the purpose of astrological and astronomical observation. Said Robert. I mean for stargazing and fortune-telling, said the learned gentleman. And there were temples and beautiful hanging gardens. I'll go to Babylon if you like, said Jane abruptly, and the others hastened to say done before she could have time to change her mind. Ah, said the learned gentleman, smiling rather sadly. One can go so far in dreams when one is young. He sighed again, and then adding with a labored briskness, I hope you'll have a jolly game. He went into his room and shut the door. He said jolly as if it was a foreign language, said Cyril. Come on, let's get the Psammead and go now. I think Babylon seems a most frightfully jolly place to go. So they woke the Psammead and put it in its bag with the waterproof sheet in case of inclement weather in Babylon. It was very cross, but it said it would as soon go to Babylon as anywhere else. The sand is good thereabouts, it added. Then Jane held up the charm, and Cyril said, We want to go to Babylon to look for the part of you that was lost. Will you please let us go there through you? Please put us down just outside, said Jane hastily, and then if we don't like it, we needn't go inside. Don't be all day, said the Psammead. So Anthea hastily uttered the word of power, without which the charm would do nothing. Heku, Secha, she said softly, and as she spoke, the charm grew into an arch so tall that the top of it was close against the bedroom ceiling. Outside of the arch was the bedroom painted chest of drawers, and the carpet, and the wash-hand stand with the riveted willow pattern jug, and the faded curtains, and the dull light of indoors on a wet day. Through the arch showed the gleam of soft green leaves and white blossoms. They stepped forward quite happily. Even Jane felt that this did not look like lions, and her hand hardly trembled at all as she held the charm for the others to go through, and last slipped through herself and hung the charm, now grown small again, around her neck. The children found themselves under a white-blossomed, green-leafed fruit tree in what seemed to be an orchard of such trees, all white-flowered and green-foliaged. Among the long green grass under their feet grew crocuses and lilies and strange blue flowers. In the branches overhead, thrushes and blackbirds were singing, and the coo of a pigeon came softly to them in the green quietness of the orchard. Oh, how perfectly lovely, cried Anthea. Why, it's like home exactly. I mean England, only everything's bluer and whiter and greener, and the flowers are bigger. The boys owned that it certainly was fairly decent, and even Jane admitted that it was all very pretty. I'm certain there's nothing to be frightened of here, said Anthea. They began to walk through the cool grass. As far as they could see was nothing but trees and more trees. At the end of their orchard was another one, only separated from theirs by a little stream of clear water. They jumped this and went on. Cyril, who was fond of gardening, which meant that he liked to watch the gardener at work, was able to command the respect of others by telling them the names of a good many trees. There were nut trees and almond trees and apricots and fig trees with their big 5-fingered leaves. And every now and then the children had to cross another brook. It's like between the squares and through the looking-glass, said Anthea. At last they came to an orchard which was quite different from the other orchards. It had a low building in one corner. These are vines, said Cyril superiorly, and I know this is a vineyard. I shouldn't wonder if there was a wine press inside that place over there. At last they got out of the orchards and onto a sort of road, very rough and not at all like the roads you are used to. It had cypress trees and acacia trees along it, and a sort of hedge of tamarisks like those you see on the road between Nice and Cannes or near Littlehampton, if you've only been as far as that. And now in front of them they could see a great mass of buildings. There were scattered houses of wood and stone here and there among the green orchards, and beyond these a great wall that shone red in the early morning sun. The wall was enormously high, more than half the height of St. Paul's, and in the wall were set enormous gates that shone like gold as the rising sun beat on them. Each gate had a solid square tower on each side of it that stood out from the wall and rose above it. Beyond the wall were more towers and houses gleaming with gold and bright colors. Away to the left ran the steel blue swirl of a great river, and the children could see through a gap in the trees that the river flowed out from the town under a great arch in the wall. "Those feathery things along the water are palms," said Cyril instructively. "Oh yes, you know everything," Robert replied. "What's all that gray-green stuff you see away over there, where it's all flat and sandy?" "All right," said Cyril loftily. "I don't want to tell you anything. I only thought you'd like to know a palm tree when you saw it again." "Look," cried Anthea, "they're opening the gates." And indeed the great gates swung back with a brazen clang, and instantly a crowd of a dozen or more people came out and along the road towards them. The children with one accord crouched behind the tamarisk hedge. "I don't like the sound of those gates," said Jane. "Fancy being inside when they shut. You would never get out." "You've got an arch of your own to go out by," the Psammead put its head out of the basket to remind her. "Don't behave so like a girl. If I were you, I would just march right into the town and ask to see the king." There was something at once simple and grand about this idea, and it pleased everyone. So when the work people had passed, they were work people, the children felt sure, because they were dressed so plainly, just one long blue shirt thing of blue or yellow. The 4 children marched boldly up to the brazen gate between the towers. The arch above the gate was quite a tunnel. The walls were so thick. "Courage," said Cyril. "Step out. It's no use trying to sneak past. Be bold." Robert answered this appeal by unexpectedly bursting into the British Grenadiers, and to its quick step they approached the gates of Babylon. This brought them to the threshold of the gate, and 2 men in bright armor suddenly barred their way with crossed spears. "Who goes there?" they said. I think I must have explained to you before how it was the children were always able to understand the language of any place they might happen to be in, and to be themselves understood. If not, I have no time to explain it now. "We come from very far," said Cyril mechanically, "from the empire where the sun never sets, and we want to see your king." "If that's quite convenient," amended Anthea. "The king, may he live forever," said the gatekeeper, "is gone to fetch home his 14th wife. Where on earth have you come from not to know that?" "The queen then," said Anthea hurriedly, and not taking any notice of the question as to where they had come from. "The queen," said the gatekeeper, "may she live forever, gives audience today 3 hours after sunrising." "But what are we to do till the end of the 3 hours?" asked Cyril. The gatekeeper seemed neither to know nor to care. He appeared less interested in them than they could have thought possible. But the man who had crossed spears with him to bar the children's way was more human. "Let them go in and look about them," he said. I'll wager my best sword they've never seen anything to come near our little village. He said it in a tone people used for when they called the Atlantic Ocean the herring pond. The gatekeeper hesitated. They're only children after all, said the other, who had children of his own. Let me off for a few minutes, Captain, and I'll take them to my place and see if my good woman can't fit them up in something a little less outlandish than their present rig. Then they can have a look around without being mobbed. May I go? Oh, yes, if you like, said the captain, but don't be all day. The man led them through the dark arch into the town, and it was very different from London. For one thing, everything in London seems to be patched up out of odds and ends, but these houses seem to have been built by people who liked the same sort of things. Not that they were all alike, for though all were squarish, they were of different sizes and decorated in all sorts of different ways, some with paintings and bright colors, some with black and silver designs. There were terraces and gardens and balconies and open spaces with trees. Their guide took them to a little house in a back street where a kind-faced woman sat spinning at the door of a very dark room. Here, he said, just lend these children a mantle each so they can go about and see the place till the Queen's audience begins. You'll leave that wool for a bit and show them around if you like. I must be off now. The woman did as she was told, and the 4 children, wrapped in fringe mantles, went with her all about the town. And oh, how I wish I had time to tell you all they saw. It was all so wonderfully different from anything you have ever seen. For one thing, all the houses were dazzlingly bright, and many of them covered with pictures. Some had great creatures carved in stone at each of the doors. And then people. There were no black-frocked coats, tall hats, no dingy coats and skirts of good, useful, ugly stuffs warranted to wear. Everyone's clothes were bright and beautiful, with blue and scarlet and green and gold. The market was brighter than you could think anything could ever be. There were stalls for everything you could possibly want, and for a great many things if you wanted here and now, want would be your master. There were pineapples and peaches in heaps, and stalls of crockery and glass things, beautiful shapes and glorious colors. There were stalls for necklaces and clasps and bracelets and brooches, for woven stuffs and embroidered linen. The children had never seen half so many beautiful things together, even at Liberty's. It seemed no time at all before the woman said, "It's nearly time now. We ought to be getting on towards the palace. It's as well to be early." So they went to the palace, and when they got there it was more splendid than anything they had seen yet. For it was glowing with colors and with gold and silver and black and white like some magnificent embroidery. Flight after flight of broad marble steps led up to it, and at the edges of the stairs stood great images, 20 times as big as a man, images of men with wings like chain armor and hawks' heads, and winged men with the heads of dogs. And there were the statues of the great kings. Between the flights of steps were terraces where fountains played in the Queen's guard, and white and scarlet and armor that shone like gold stood by twos, lining the way up the stairs, and a great body of them was massed by the vast door of the palace itself, where it stood glittering like an impossibly radiant peacock in the noonday sun. All sorts of people were walking up the steps to seek audience of the Queen. Ladies in richly embroidered dresses with fringy flounces, poor folks in plain and simple clothes, dandies with beards oiled and curled. And Cyril, Robert, and Thea and Jane went with the crowd. At the gate of the palace, the Psammead put one eye cautiously out of the basket and whispered, "I can't be bothered with queens. I'll go home with this lady. I'm sure she'll get me some sand if you ask her to." "Oh, don't leave us," said Jane. The woman was giving some last instructions in court etiquette to Anthea and did not hear Jane. "Don't be a little muff," said the Psammead quite fiercely. "It's not a bit of good your having a charm. You never use it. If you want me, you've only got to say the name of the power and ask the charm to bring me to you." "I'd rather go with you," said Jane, and it was the most surprising thing she had ever said in her life. Everyone opened its mouth without thinking of manners, and Anthea, who was peeping into the Psammead's basket, saw that its mouth opened wider than anybody's. "You needn't gawk like that," Jane went on. "I'm not going to be bothered with queens anymore. That is it. And I know wherever it is, it'll take jolly good care of that it's safe." "She's right there," said everyone, for they had observed that the Psammead had a way of knowing which side its bread was buttered. She turned to the woman and said, "You'll take me home with you, won't you, and let me play with your little girls till the others have done with the queen?" "Surely I will, little heart," said the woman. And then Anthea hurriedly stroked the Psammead and embraced Jane, who took the woman's hand and trotted contentedly away with the Psammead's bag under the other arm. The others stood looking after her till she, the woman, and the basket were lost in the many-colored crowd. Then Anthea turned once more to the palace's magnificent doorway and said, "Let's ask the porter to take care of our Babylonian overcoats." So they took off the garments that the woman had lent them and stood amid the jostling petitioners of the queen in their own English frocks and coats and hats and boots. "We want to see the queen," said Cyril. "We come from the far empire where the sun never sets." A murmur of surprise and a thrill of excitement ran through the crowd. The door porter spoke to a man. He spoke to someone else. There was a whispering, waiting, pause. Then a big man with a cleanly shaven face beckoned them from the top of the flight of red marble stairs. They went up, the boots of Robert clattering more than usual because he was so nervous. A door swung open, a curtain was drawn back. A double line of bowing forms in gorgeous raiment formed a lane that led up to the steps of the throne. And as the children advanced hurriedly, there came from the throne a voice very sweet and kind. "3 children from the land where the sun never sets. Let them draw hither without fear." And with that, my friends, we are going to pause this chapter until the next episode when we will complete it. My hope is you have drifted off already. And if you haven't, the angels will stay with you, and you can always queue up another episode, and the love will remain with you throughout the evening, into the sunrise and into the next day. So you have a good rest. Know that you are loved. Know that you are precious in this world. And the angels and I are deeply grateful for the gift of you. I wish you sweet dreams. Be well.